15 expired foods you should never eat. The hidden dangers of eating after the date. Welcome to Pivra. Now listen up, you lot. Today we're getting straight to the point on a matter that affects every single one of you. Food safety. Those expiration dates on your food, they're not bloody suggestions. They're there for a reason. Some of you, I swear, you look in your fridge and see a science experiment growing, not food. You've got cans in the back of your pantry older than you are. Let's be clear, I'm not here to torch your entire kitchen. But if you're the type who thinks that yogurt will magically resurrect itself after a week past its prime, you need a serious wake-up call. We're about to expose the 15 common foods you should never, I repeat, never touch once that expiration date has passed. From something as seemingly innocent as rice to more delicate items like seafood, we're diving deep into why these foods turn into culinary time bombs after their prime. Stay tuned if you value your gut and want to avoid a one-way ticket to food poisoning hell. This is Pivra, where we serve up the truth about food, no matter how raw it gets. First up, let's talk about those tins cluttering your pantry. You think they last forever? Think again. Canned goods, while convenient, can be a breeding ground for botulism if you're not bloody careful. This nasty piece of work is caused by a toxin that attacks your nervous system. Don't think you're safe just because the can looks fine from the outside either. This toxin is silent but deadly. We're talking paralysis, double vision, difficulty swallowing. It's a living nightmare. And the worst part, it can be fatal. So next time you reach for that can of soup that's been sitting in your pantry since the Stone Age, think twice. Check that expiration date. And for God's sake, if the can is bulging, dented or leaking, chuck it in the bin faster than I can say, you donkey. Spinach. Popeye might have sworn by it, but trust me, even he wouldn't touch the expired stuff. Those leafy greens might look innocent, but past their prime, they can harbor more bacteria than a sewer. We're talking about E. coli, my friends, and it's not here to play nice. E. coli contamination is a one-way ticket to food poisoning hell. We're talking stomach cramps that feel like you're being stabbed, crippling diarrhea, and vomiting so violent you'll think you're possessed. So, unless you're aiming for a close encounter with your toilet bowl, ditch that slimy, expired spinach. Fresh is best, and trust me, your gut will thank you for it. Now, let's talk nut butters. Peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter. They're pantry staples, I get it. But even these seemingly innocent jars of goodness can turn on you. You see, the oils in nut butters can go rancid over time, especially if they're not stored properly. Rancid nut butter is not something you want to mess with. Not only will it taste like old socks, but it can also wreak havoc on your digestive system. We're talking nausea, stomach cramps and diarrhea that could fuel a rocket. So, unless you're aiming for a one-way ticket to the bathroom, keep your nut butters fresh and toss them when they're past their prime. Chapter 4, Potato Salad. A recipe for disaster, potato salad. A picnic classic, right? Wrong. This seemingly innocent side dish is a breeding ground for bacteria, especially if it's been sitting out in the sun for longer than it should. Salmonella and Listeria are just two uninvited guests who love a good potato salad party. And let me tell you, they're not there to make friends. We're talking high fever, chills, muscle aches and stomach cramps that would make a grown man cry. And don't even get me started on the potential complications. So, unless you fancy a dance with death, make sure your potato salad is fresh, properly refrigerated and consumed quickly. Your gut will thank you for it. Chapter 5, Rice. Don't gamble with this grain. Rice, the staple of countless cultures, seems harmless enough, right? Wrong! Cooked or uncooked, rice can be a haven for some nasty bacteria. Cooked rice, left out at room temperature, becomes a breeding ground for Bacillus cereus. This little bugger produces toxins that can cause some seriously unpleasant food poisoning. Think vomiting, diarrhea and abdominal cramps that'll have you begging for mercy. And don't think dry rice is off the hook. It can harbour mold and pests that can make your life a living hell. So whether it's cooked or uncooked, treat your rice with respect. Store it properly, cook it thoroughly, and for God's sake, don't leave it sitting out at room temperature for hours on end. Chapter 6. Egg whites, cracking under pressure, egg whites. Bodybuilders and fitness fanatics love them, but even these protein powerhouses can turn on you. Expired egg whites are a breeding ground for salmonella, and trust me, you don't want to mess with this nasty bacteria. We're talking about food poisoning symptoms so severe, you'll be praying for a swift end. Think fever, chills, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal cramps that feel like someone's stabbing you with a rusty spoon. So, unless you're aiming for a one-way ticket to the hospital, check those expiration dates and only use fresh, properly refrigerated egg whites. Now, I love a good cheese board as much as the next person, but soft cheeses, while delicious, need to be treated with caution. Brie, camembert, feta, these creamy delights are a breeding ground for listeria, and trust me, you don't want to mess with this bacteria. Listeria is particularly dangerous for pregnant women, as it can cause miscarriage, stillbirth, or serious health problems for the newborn. But even if you're not expecting, listeria can cause severe food poisoning with symptoms like fever, muscle aches, and diarrhea. So be smart, check those expiration dates, and keep your soft cheeses refrigerated. Cooking oil. It's the foundation of countless dishes, but even this kitchen staple has a shelf life. Over time, cooking oil can go rancid, especially if it's exposed to heat, light, or air. And trust me, rancid oil is not something you want to be cooking with. Not only will it give your food a disgusting, acrid flavor, but it can also release harmful free radicals that can damage your cells. We're talking about an increased risk of heart disease, cancer, and other chronic diseases. So next time you're about to use that bottle of cooking oil that's been sitting in your pantry for months, do yourself a favor and chuck it in the bin. Your body will thank you for it. Ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, they're the backbone of many a sandwich and burger, but don't let those colorful bottles fool you. They're not invincible. Like any other food, condiments have a shelf life, and ignoring it can be a recipe for disaster. Expired condiments can harbor mold, bacteria, and yeast that can make you seriously ill. We're talking about food poisoning symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and stomach cramps. So next time you're about to slather your burger with that ancient bottle of ketchup, do yourself a favor and check the expiration date. Trust me, your gut will thank you for it. Chapter 10. Mussels. Not worth the risk. Mussels, those delicate, briny morsels that scream fancy dinner party. But hold your horses, my friend. If those mussels are past their prime, you're in for a world of hurt. Expired mussels are like ticking time bombs, just waiting to unleash a symphony of food poisoning symptoms that'll have you wishing you'd ordered a takeaway pizza instead. We're talking about nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal cramps, and in severe cases, even neurological problems. So unless you fancy a close encounter with your toilet bowl, or worse, a trip to the hospital, make sure your mussels are fresh, properly stored, and cooked to perfection. Chapter 11. Ground pork, handle with extreme caution. Ground pork, versatile, affordable, and oh so delicious. But don't let its innocent appearance fool you. This kitchen staple can turn into a culinary nightmare if you're not careful. Expired ground pork is a breeding ground for harmful bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella, just waiting to wreak havoc on your digestive system. We're talking about symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal cramps, and fever so high you'll think you're in the Sahara Desert. So, unless you fancy a one-way ticket to food poisoning hell, make sure your ground pork is fresh, stored properly, and cooked thoroughly to an internal temperature of 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 71 degrees Celsius. Chapter 12. Fish. Don't be a fish out of water. Fish. It's brain food, they say, full of omega-3s and good fats. But let me tell you, expired fish is about as good for your brain as a kick in the head. That's because when fish goes bad, it produces a nasty little compound called histamine. And histamine, my friends, is responsible for scombroid poisoning. We're talking about a severe allergic reaction that can send you to the emergency room faster than you can say cod liver oil. Think hives, swelling, difficulty breathing, rapid heartbeat, and even a drop in blood pressure. So, unless you're auditioning for a role in Jaws the Revenge, make sure your fish is fresh, stored properly, and cooked thoroughly. Chapter 13, Fiddleheads, a forage nightmare. Fiddleheads, those cute little curled-up ferns that scream spring has sprung, but don't let their charming appearance fool you. These forage delicacies can be downright dangerous if you're not careful. Expired fiddleheads can harbour harmful bacteria and toxins that can turn your springtime feast into a gastrointestinal nightmare. We're talking about nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal cramps, and in severe cases even liver damage. So unless you fancy a close encounter with your toilet bowl or worse, a hospital bed, make sure your fiddleheads are fresh, properly stored, and cooked thoroughly before you even think about putting them in your mouth. Chapter 14, Deli meats, sliced up and served with a side of danger. Deli meats, a lunchtime staple, right? Wrong. Those thinly sliced meats might seem harmless, but they can be a breeding ground for bacteria if you're not careful. Listeria is a particular fan of deli meats, and trust me, you don't want to mess with this nasty piece of work. We're talking about symptoms like fever, muscle aches, confusion, loss of balance, and convulsions, and for pregnant women, Listeria can be even more dangerous, potentially leading to miscarriage, stillbirth, or serious health problems for the newborn. So, unless you're aiming for a one-way ticket to the hospital, make sure your deli meats are fresh, stored properly, and consumed within their recommended time frame. Chapter 15, Oysters, from delicacy to downright dangerous. Oysters, aphrodisiacs of the sea, they call them. But let me tell you, expired oysters are about as sexy as a plate of week-old fish. That's because these shellfish are filter feeders, which means they absorb everything in their surroundings, including harmful bacteria like Vibrio. Now, Vibrio is not something you want to mess with. We're talking about a nasty piece of work that can cause a range of symptoms from mild diarrhea to life-threatening septicemia. So, unless you fancy a romantic rendezvous with your toilet bowl or worse, a hospital bed, make sure your oysters are fresh, properly stored, and sourced from reputable suppliers. Outro stays safe and savvy in the kitchen. So there you have it, you muppets. 15 foods you should never even think about eating past their prime. Remember, those expiration dates are there for a reason. Don't try to be a hero and push your luck with dodgy ingredients. You're not competing in a culinary game show here. Trust your gut, check those labels, and when in doubt, throw it out. Your health and taste buds will thank you for it. Now clear your kitchens, and for God's sake, someone get me a fresh apron. This one's covered in more expired food than I care to mention. Thanks for tuning in to Pivra. If you found this culinary carnage helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more kitchen wisdom and food safety tips. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an episode, and remember, when it comes to food, always play it safe. Until next time, keep it clean and keep it fresh.